The Yes campaign for the Indigenous voice to Parliament hit a setback this week after my interview with the Prime Minister on Tuesday night and subsequent interview with Ben Fordham on 2GB the next morning. The PM was vague on how the voice will work, just no details. It's pretty simple. If you want people to support the voice, you've got to entrust the public with more detail. Let's bring in Cameron Milner, former Chief of Staff to Bill Shorten and the Director of GXO Strategies. Thanks for joining us again, Cameron. As a good Labor man, you support the voice, but you reckon, like I do, Anthony Albanese and Linda Burney are mangling the advocacy here, mangling the Yes case. How so?
Look, I was a yes vote to the Australian Republic, I was a yes vote to marriage equality, and I'll be a yes vote to the voice because I believe in it. But wider than me, the Australian public needs to know the detail of what they're voting for. Australian referenda are rare things. Only 8 out of 44 have actually got up in our history. So these are things which are hard to get up, hard to get a yes vote to. So we need to do everything possible, leave no stone unturned. And if the detail is what's demanded, if detail is what voters want, what the opposition wants, then we should give it to them.
Well, it's not only what voters want, it's what voters deserve. They deserve the detail. Now, we know that the crucial detail of the constitutional amendment is out there and we can debate that. But if you're wanting that amendment to put a voice, to have Parliament legislate a voice, you've got to tell people, at least in basic terms, how you would see that voice operating, how many people would be on it, are they paid or not, how it would interact with various governments and state voices. And Anthony Albanese and Linda Burney seem to think they can skate through without talking about any of that detail.
I think the white male strategists who are sitting in the back room being too clever by half are getting this wrong, Chris. I think we need to have all the detail out there. If there's nothing to see, nothing to fear, then put it all on the table. Let's actually let the light shine in, let the legislation be seen, even move the legislation to the Parliament so people actually know what they're voting for when it comes to the referendum.
See, this gets back to one of my pet hates about politics, and that is treating people like mugs, underestimating the intelligence of the Australian public. Now, one of the things I admire about our two best recent Prime Ministers, in my view, one from either side, are Bob Hawke and John Howard. And they both believed that if you had ideas, you needed to explain them to the public in detail and try and convince enough of them to support you. And Anthony Albanese seems to be afraid of doing that.
Look, and both Bob Hawke and John Howard had the courage to take big ideas to the electorate and then implement them in the parliamentary term ahead. Not the small target strategy of falling across the line that we've seen from this Prime Minister, nor the last 6 months of the legislature that's seen legislation mangled and deals done and side deals done. It's awful seeing, Lydia Thorpe and, David Pocock and others essentially determine the laws of the land. When you can't get agreement between Labor and the coalition on something as important as the voice, we need bipartisan compact. We need Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese step by step, standing behind this, saying yes and agreeing what the voice should look like. And that means, I think, seeing the exposure legislation and potentially even moving it in Parliament before we get to vote in the referendum.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. Now, of course, there'll be opponents. There should be opponents to everything you do in politics in many respects, and you won't win them all over. And Anthony Albanese seems to be scared of taking people on and having that debate. And they want to demonise anyone who opposes them, brand them as racist and the like. That's the trouble. When you make it a moral crusade rather than a logical argument, you look at demonising the other side. He's really got to engage the other side, doesn't he? The other thing he's got to do, and you point out this out in your piece in The Australian today, is get into that intellectual debate and have those arguments even with the opponents, instead of doing stupid stunts like getting a retired American basketballer to endorse something he doesn't even know anything about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Shaq attack was terrible, backed up by giving David Warner, who's done plenty for cricket in Australia, I might add, a Rabbitohs cap. I mean, these are stunts which aren't worthy of the voice. And as I said, you need an informed choice for the voice, and that is the only way with detail to make sure we can ensure a yes vote. And that's what Australia needs. That's what our country needs.
Sure does, Cameron. Thanks for joining us.